What's going on, everybody? Sorry I am late getting this started. A couple housekeeping items, but we're going to be previewing the event this week. We'll be looking at the golf course briefly and then running through some sims on runthesims.com. So I got my last build running right now. So we'll have 3 to run through and sim out and see who is popping. Otherwise, we can talk through the golf course while that one finishes up, and then we can look at who's spitting out the highest sim results over at runthesims.com. You can use code FGB to save you 10% off for their PGA subscriptions. Let's get to it. All right. This week's the Worldwide Technology Championship. Is being played at the Cardinal at the Diamond. Instead of me trying to pronounce that in Spanish, probably easy, but for sake of not butchering it on a Wednesday night, this is a Tiger Woods design. So let's go ahead and take a look at the golf course quickly. It's very basic, resort style, easy, wide open. Wind is really the biggest factor. It's very straightforward. There's not a lot of nuance and micro stats we can look at. In my opinion anyways. It's all the basic stuff, which you'll see down here in the lead-in stat correlations that we have. But it's a par 72. It's 74.52. The last 2 winners, Austin Eckroat, -24, Eric Van Rooyen at -27. Let me take this banner off real quick. There we go. Like I said, very easy golf course. Return to par per round for the field is 2.3 strokes under par. Let's see here. Some of the big things that stood out to me this week, similar to the last 2 weeks. Driving accuracy at 89%, green regulation at 78%. But the driving accuracy number is the big one. If you remember from the Black Diamond Resort, it was around 80%, and now we're approaching 90%. Very high missed fairway penalty, which basically just means if you're missing the fairway, what is the penalty versus everyone else that hit the fairway? And you can see it's almost a full 3/4 of a shot, 0.7 strokes above the field average for that hole. So it's pretty heavy. I wouldn't worry about driving too much. It's wide open, very simple. The wind is the biggest factor, which we can definitely look at. Forgot about that. We can look at the wind for Thursday. I think Friday looked pretty good. Can I help you? No, go. All right. So, like I said, housekeeping items. So, lead-in stat correlations, total strokes gained. This is over here on the left-hand side. Total strokes gained was number 1 by far. That's just looking at everybody over the last few months who's been playing the best. That is by far the most correlated with the finish position. Bogey avoidance and birdie or better. You could argue those are two. I mean, it's probably a pretty easy argument to win, but it's basically a combination of those two gets you to total strokes gained in one way or another. So in a sense, bogey avoidance and birdie or better is correlated with total strokes gained. So you can see how those two would be up there as one of the top correlated stats for the week. Strokes gained putting was next, and then strokes gained tee to green. I'm not so concerned with strokes gained putting. Yes, it correlated. Don't mind leaving a little bit of putting numbers in there. It is on past Palom, so looking at some past Palom splits, if you're really diving into some data, is not the worst thing in the world. But for sake of keeping it simple, looking back in the last 3 to 4 months, I think I did 4 months. Total strokes gained tee to green, and then just simply bogey avoidance and birdie or better. Basically, who's just playing the best in this weak field. That's probably the most challenging thing in the fall swing. One is guys have larger breaks in between what the FedEx Cup playoffs have back in August. And then when we get into September and October, there's bigger gaps between the data. So just simply looking at who's playing the best strokes gained, that's kind of what I want to focus on. Golf course doesn't really favor, even with the wide fairways, doesn't really favor distance over accuracy. You can see that here on the left-hand side. And then I'm not going to dive into anything crazy with the stats. I will show you. People do like to look at this, so I'll just do it really quickly. As far as recent form and course history, so there's an easy way to do this quantitatively. The recent form, we can do a recent strokes gained. So you can go by finish position, but like you think about a major, finishing 5th in a major versus finishing 5th at the Bay Current Classic, it's not the same thing. So looking at recent strokes gained, we can do, greater than, let's just call it a stroke, gaining over a stroke per round. Shrinks the field a good bit, probably around 25 guys. And then we can sort on course history and see who's been gaining the most. It's only been played here the last 2 years, so it's a little bit of a limited sample size. But you can see Max Grieserman, Garrett Kigo, Mackenzie Hughes, Matt Kuchar, Brandt Snedeker, interestingly enough, and then Ben Griffin. So Ben Griffin probably going to be the chalkiest play on the slate for good reason with how well he's been playing, decent course history, moderately decent course history, and just class of the field for the most part between him and JJ Spawn. So did want to show that really quickly. Let's look at the weather. So Thursday, let's see, 12 miles per hour at 10 a.m., 10 miles per hour at 1, and then 12 miles per hour at 4. So pretty steady all day on Thursday. We'll just call it like low teens. I don't see anything. Yeah, it's using a tower in Mexico, so I assume they don't have gust. Like this model doesn't have gust. Usually we would see a sustained winds and then a max gust, which is what I'm more concerned with. So we'll just call it an even, 10 to 15 miles per hour on Thursday. Friday is a little bit more calm. We're looking at 9, 6, and 10. So we'll call that sub 10 miles per hour. So both days, honestly, Thursday's a little bit worse, but it's not bad by any means. Friday is pretty prime. Looking at splits, I don't see anything super favorable. I would probably want to get out early on Thursday with the wind. I would assume the wind would pick up more in the afternoon, even though this doesn't say that. But I would want to be playing earlier on Thursday and then take my chances in the afternoon on Friday. So with that being said, I think that's all I want to do. We'll try to keep this one to about probably a 30 or 40 minute show. In the fall swing, it's not as many eyeballs, so it's to be expected. But let's go take a look at the player pool. So our projections from Fantasy Golf Bag are all loaded in here. Ownership for DraftKings. I don't have ownership for Fanduel yet. It's in progress, and I'm sure Brian and his team's working on stuff like that too. Golf's just not a huge priority with NFL in full swing right now. But we'll just focus on DraftKings for now. I didn't run any builds for Fanduel anyways, so it would be I'd have to segue into Fanduel. But this is a look at the pricing. We'll look at the top projected guys and the salaries, and then also the ownership. So we'll just go off of our projections. Ben Griffin, number 1. JJ Spawn, number 2. Rico Hoey, number 3. Takumi Kanaya gets a huge bump in our projections. It stands out like a sore thumb. We have 10K guys and some 9K, 8K guys, and then Takumi Kanaya, who's been playing pretty well. So he gets a really favorable course fit, recent form bump in a weak field. It doesn't take very much to project halfway decent. So that's probably the biggest outlier there. He's not overly popular, so I assume we're pretty different than other projection sites, but still approaching 20%. Had that been 25, 30%, if the industry agreed, then it would be a different topic. So going down, let's see if there's any others that really stand out. Doug Gim, Vince Whaley. I do like Vince Whaley this week. Doug Gim's fine as well, but overall pretty close. Grayson Sigg's been playing really well recently. He's at 7,100. And we'll see what Snedeker does. He keeps popping and everything, so I can't pull the trigger, but it's a tempting spot to at least plug in a few Brandt Snedekers. And then on down the line, Ben Silverman. That's pretty much it. Nick Taylor, I bet outright 8,800. pretty strong projection as well. As far as ownership goes, Ben Griffin, JJ Spawn align with the best projections in the field. That makes sense. They're also the most expensive, and typically optimizers will jam in the most expensive that has the highest projection. It doesn't really matter. There's enough, leniency in the 7Ks and even some of the 6Ks with projections being within a few points. They can find value. But if you can jam in guys that are projected 10 points higher as a mean projection, that's going to be where most people are going to go with their lineup. So starting each lineup with either Ben Griffin or JJ Spawn, I don't think both is viable this week. Let's see. Yeah. Kanaya's fourth highest owned. Makes sense. You would think he'd be a little bit higher. So maybe that's we undershot that number. We'll see where it comes in. Let's see. Grillo, Matt Wallace, Max Grieserman. Makes sense. Orbinson. Johnny Kiefer at 7,900. Not the best projection for us. Really good. I should say really high ownership relative to his projection from what we have. Let's see. Garrett Higo, I think, is going to be more popular than the 15% we have. Eckroat, maybe a little bit more popular as well. And I think that's it. So let's go run some sims and see if, my initial hot takes are correct. And see who's kind of spitting out the highest EV lineup. So again, similar to the last couple weeks, I ran 3 builds. Getting into 4 and 5, I would start to have to really manipulate stuff. So let's do, I'll just kind of backtrack into what I did in build 1, try to recall a little bit. Build 1, 5,000 lineups. I think I did uniques at 2. Max exposure, I think, was 35%. Randomness at 35%. So the goal there was to be more concentrated around a core, if you will, of guys that can be used in multiple lineups and overlap quite often, but higher randomness. So it's not going to be strictly off the projections and like a small deviation from those projections. And then the max exposure is reasonably low, like 35%, just trying not to get overexposed to anybody to kind of offset the uniques per lineup being set at 2. When I went to build 2, that was uniques at 3, max exposure. I think I went up to 50% or 40%, probably guess. Yeah, 50% max. Okay. Randomness went down to 20%. So it was basically higher uniques, a little bit lower randomness, a little bit higher exposure. So again, trying to get to a little bit more concentration, more uniques. It's trying to offset a little bit, if that makes sense. Like the dynamic between uniques per lineup, max exposure, and randomness, you could kind of you can kind of hack it to get to similar builds with different exposures, and that's my goal. And then the last one is just this. So I did uniques per lineup 4, so very high uniques. We should have a very, very wide, if not complete, player pool. I don't know if it shows the total number, but like this should be almost the entire player pool. That was kind of the goal there. Randomness went down. So basically a lot of uniques per lineup adds randomness in the sense that you can't have too much overlap or concentration. I lowered the randomness, so it's using the projections a little bit closer to that mean. And then max exposure also went down, which kind of aligns with the uniques per lineup, to 25%. So think of this as like a very wide open lineup construction, trying to hit a lot of different weird combos. That's the goal. And you should see that kind of shift a little bit. Some of the top exposures are about the same. Let's see. 20, 21. This one's a little bit higher for Ben Griffin. So let's go ahead and run it. We'll do 1, do large field, even though the field's kind of small. Let's do medium. No, we'll do large. Just do large for now. So we'll let this run for a second. All right, pretty quick. Good job from the team. Let's see here. Is this working yet? Yeah, just a breakdown of the lineup. So, looking at the top 150 exposures, Thorbjorn Olesen, JJ Spawn, which was one of the higher projected guys, Ben Griffin as well. They all show up at the top. Emiliano Grillo. Looking down here, Jacob Bridgman, Garrett Kago, Kevin Yu, Matt Wallace. These are all pretty balanced, honestly. I imagine they're using one of Ben Griffin. Oh, there's a few with both Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn at the top. Interesting. So some of the top lineups here in this pool is jamming in both Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn. Kanaya's just got a super strong projection, so we could probably bump that down and rerun it and see if that changes anything. Just assume we're wrong. A little too hot on Kanaya. But yeah, Ben Griffin, JJ Spawn. Do like Svensson, Ben Silverman, bet Silverman this morning. Nick Taylor. I still like the builds where it's one or the other. So like most of these in here have Ben Griffin or JJ Spawn. A lot of overlap, a lot of Nick Taylor. Adam Svensson, Ben Silverman. So that's kind of like the core that this is spitting out. Let's see. Just taking a look at like the next highest price guy. So like we just saw Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn. Hoey was kind of high, and then Max Grieserman. I'm curious where like Grieserman is. Pretty good number. So it's honestly a pretty good mix. Yeah, he's 18% here. So let's run build 2 and let's see if we get a lot of the same exposures. Then the goal is to kind of build a core around that. Okay. So in this build, Ben Griffin gets a slight bump over JJ Spawn, so a little bit more preference there. Kanaya still only 21%, which is pretty good. The projection's high, but like this isn't like crazy. Grillo, I think all these guys pretty much overlap. Let's see. Olesen, let's just check Olesen really quick. 19%. So I would say, see if I can do this. So this is build. You can't see that, can you? Nope. Perfect. Let me see. That's okay. I can still run through it. So just trying to eyeball like the top guys. So Ben Griffin, 40%. In build 1, you can see he was 24%. So in build 2, he was 40%. JJ Spawn, about the same, 26%. He was 27% in build 2. Grillo, 26, and he was 22. Kanaya, 8%. Crazy. 8%. In this second build, he was 21%. The guys that carry over quite a bit, it's really just Spawn, Grillo, Ben Griffin. We have Higo, Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace is number 5 in the second build, and Max Grieserman is right behind him. Michael Thorbjorn as well. Rico Hoey does not make an appearance in like the top 10, which is interesting, but pretty tight off of those. So let's go to build 3. We'll run one more large field. Let's see what's going on. All right, perfect. Again, you can start to see some trends here. Wyndham Clark's a little bit different. We got Ben Griffin, JJ Spawn. So you could, that's a kind of a given at this point. And we've talked about projections like over the last month. Anything with a mean projection that much higher than the next group is going to be jammed in quite often. It just maths out pretty well. So Michael Jorgensen, Greaserman, Higo, Olesen, those all check out really closely. Johnny Kiefer was kind of up there as well. And then Grillo's a little bit lower in this one, but still like that. Matt Wallace as well. So if we did like a short list, I'd probably say Griffin, Spawn, Jorgensen, Greaserman, Higo, Olesen. And then I would come down here, at least for this build. It would be Grillo, Wallace, and where was the last one? I think it was Kevin Yu. Yeah, Kevin Yu. So that's where I would go. Just see if there's any other little tricks when we look through like the top lineups. Yeah. I like these a bit more. So like you can see in build 1, like those top lineups had Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn together, which is viable. I just don't like punting off 3 guys basically. When you go to this second one, you can see the EVs, the total projection starts to drop because the ownership's going down with it. I like these with JJ Spawn, a few more mid-price guys. You got Fishburne, Hoey. Hoey's not super mid-price. Fishburne, Victor Perez, Snedeker, and then Kanaya is 7,900. Going down the list, it's the same thing. JJ Spawn and then a bunch of mid-price guys. So I do like the balance feel for sure. And then build 3, I think, was about the same. Yeah, it was either Ben Griffin or JJ Spawn, not both. So in this pool, build 2 and build 3, where there's a little bit more of a variance in the overlap of uniques per lineup, we get a lot less concentration of Ben Griffin and JJ Spawn together. So I like these builds a lot more for this week. And you can see kind of, based off of the exposures too, you can kind of see JJ Spawn, Hoey, Kanaya, Greaserman. You can see a lot of these lineups basically have at least 1 or 2 of those pieces in each one. That's grading out pretty well. It's interesting to see the dynamic between like projection and the EV. So like there's some down here, like the second one, it's 4 points higher of a projection. These are pretty close. This is not the best example. You could probably come down here for some that are closer. Yeah, 524, 76%, 76%. That's pretty close, actually. These here are a little bit different. We have 523 down further, 518, 517 at the top, 512 down here, 66% ownership. So it's interesting with the combination of players, what salary is left as well, like lower ownership, but also left 800. So I assume there's not a lot of issues with duping in PGA DFS, but like the combination doesn't happen very often. So even if those players are reasonably high owned, the combination is not high owned, or at least 3 or 4 of them together is not common. So I think that's it for this week. It's not one of the funnest weeks to watch just because it's typically a birdie fest and you're going to look at your scores of guys and they all look like they're going to shoot a course record and you're barely cashing if not cashing. So not one of my favorites. Gets to be a pretty volatile. But yeah, we can do, I guess we'll do one more thing. We'll just run tournament sims real quick. I know someone asked about bets last time, so we can do that quickly. We'll just do 20,000 real fast. Nick Taylor was a big one. The favorites weren't. I don't think Ben Griffin or JJ Spawn had any value at their numbers, which is typical. Give that just a second. And I don't bet the long shots that have value. We'll see that from time to time. In matchups, it makes sense. In betting outrights, it's like you're just kind of wasting. You're just wasting value. Example here, if you sort on this, you'll see like Svensson, Quade Cummins, Nick Hardy, Norlander, Braden Thornberry all have good value. Their win equity is not high enough to really warrant kind of taking a stab at it. I guess Svensson and Quade Cummins, Nick Hardy's probably in the ballpark, but like we're talking about a value on a 700 to 1. If you want to have a card with 12 people, then you can go for it. For me, I'd rather go look through our actual odds. Go back this way. And then just kind of scroll down to see. It's like Ben Griffin's the favorite. We have a slight negative EV on him. JJ Spawn coming down. We see Nick Taylor's our biggest pop first. Emiliano Grillo. Those are the ones that I would want to bet. Pretty strong odds, about, implied 40% edge. But we got 2.7% implied by Vegas, and we're at close to 4%. So still, you're not going to win very many times. These guys don't, it's just part of golf. But that's the value that I'd be looking for. It's not just always the biggest EV and outrights. You're trying to find a mix. And honestly, I've bet guys when they've been slightly negative. Like if you really have a lean on Ben Griffin, you have one person on your card, it's totally fine to place that. Like we're talking about, splitting hairs between some of these EV numbers. And it's very biased to whatever inputs we have. So like if it's a little bit wrong, that minus 0.2 or 0.02 could be, positive 5% or something like that, depending on what inputs you're using. So Kanaya has a big bump. We talked about that. I didn't bet Victor Perez. Vince Whaley I do like. Matt Kuchar, not betting him. I did see some people bet Eckroat. I didn't go down that path. And then some of these are like very small, moderate pieces. I think the last one, Grayson Sig, has a lot of equity. Been playing good. Excuse me. Trying not to cough into the mic. I think that's it, guys. Plenty of value, and a lot of these guys, these leaderboards from those events come in. You can see like last year. Like all these names is not known. I mean, Wesley Bryan made like $17,000 this year, and he finished 6th here. Carson Young, Justin Lauer. Let's see. Kevin Chappell, finished T12. So there's some good ones. Like Patrick Fishburne has some overlap. Dylan Wu, I think, made like $10,000 this year, and somehow he finished 14th in this event. It's just kind of wide open on the bottom range. So not to speak too much to volatility, but this is when anything is really low scoring, the bands just expand quite a bit. So keep that in mind. And then I think that's it, guys. All righty. We'll leave it there. Like I said, you can use code FGB. I know they're working on updates to add like Shady's optimizer portfolio tool. So I know, and they're working on a lot of NFL updates. If you've been paying attention to their shows, talking through some of those back end updates. Sims and what they're going to do for like next season. But they've been pushing out a lot of stuff. So I'm sure, as soon as we get to the playoffs, the golf product will get like the shady tool added in. I know Nerdy was working on that, but not sure the timeline. So definitely check it out. You can use code FGB for 10% off those subscriptions. Until next time, guys, we'll see you next week, but best of luck this week. If I can find the outro. All right. Good luck, guys. See ya.